Yeah, good evening, everyone, and I welcome us to this section. On the call tonight, we have Mr. Ogunlade Temitope, who's an expert in SQL. He has been a data analyst, has been a operation manager, and has been a senior operation analyst, right? And he's very good in this area. He knows how to cheat very well. So I want us to follow closely as he'll be teaching us SQL. Mr. Tope, we appreciate you for joining us. Yeah, it's a privilege for having us at this hour of the time to share your little knowledge with us. We pray that God bless you in Jesus' name. So
Yeah,
you can
thank
have the floor, sir. Over to you, sir. So we can give room for question, maybe around that 9:55. We suspend the rest till next week. Now, thank you.
Okay, so thank you very much, Paul. It's a great privilege to be here this evening. So I'll be sharing my screen shortly. I hope you can all see my screen now.
Yes, you can see us too.
Yes.
Okay. So I would like to first say this. Paul has been doing a great work so far. When you have tasted a tutor like Paul and you want to come to someone like me now, you need to be patient with me with the way I handle you. Uh, However, I have a little thing against him. Each time we are learning together, he's not that patient with me. So it's a privilege to be here this evening once again. So let me quickly run through some things here. I would like to let you know that it will be a practical class, but at the same time, when you are talking about SQL, it's not like Excel or Power BI that you can just jump on straight away, like working on the software like that. So there will be need for us to run through some basic terms that we'll be using in the course of this training. So that's what I'll be doing very quickly. I would like you all to confirm that you can see my screen. Somebody should just talk.
I can
Yes,
see
your
your
screen is
screen.
visible.
Yeah, thank you. So SQL, what is SQL? SQL is a structure query language. So anytime you hear SQL, the full meaning is structured query language, and some are not comfortable calling it a programming language, while some uh, uh, believe also are comfortable calling it a programming language. Like unlike Python, when you say Python or programming, you can easily say those ones are programming language. But for SQL, some set of learning group believe is not a programming language, while some believe is a programming language. But I'd like to put it to us here today that is a programming language basically used for processing information in relational database. When we say relational database, what do we mean by relational database? We have different type of database system, but for SQL is basically used for a relational database, which is what all of us are familiar with. I believe we've worked on Microsoft Excel for several weeks now. So that kind of data presented in Microsoft Excel environment, whereby you have a row, you have a column. I'm referring to something like this, whereby you have a row, you have a column, is called a relational database. And you guys also need to have some basic understanding of what all these rows and column entails. When you talk about column we usually refer to this in when you are dealing with database as a field. And what do you mean by field? It contains information about a particular instance. For instance, this is order ID, and what you are seeing here is different order ID. So the information you are seeing in this column, which is known as field, is just an information about a particular instance, which is this order ID. For customer ID is information about this instance. That is what your field does in relational database. And your role, what your roles does is that it gives you a information about a particular subject. Another main word that we call rows in relational database is, we call it record. So it gives you information about a particular subject. For instance, Alfred is a subject here. Now you get information about this particular subject in that row. So that is why we call it record. So I'm just trying to break the word relational database to us. So it's a database presented in tabular form. And if it's not in the tabular form, then you can't SQL out of it. So that is what SQL is used for basically. And you can use SQL statement for quite a number of things: to store, to update, remove, search, retrieve, to fetch data from database, and quite a number of things. And I believe some of us, we've all jumped to Power BI. I would like to let us know there is more to it. When you get to the real stream of Power BI, and without knowledge of SQL, you may not know how to swim out of the river. So SQL is a very, very important tool when you are dealing with data analytic. Let's move on. Why so important? I've mentioned some of the reasons why it's important. It's a very, very important tool when you are fetching data from your database, and as a data analyst, you cannot do without it. I will say that again, you cannot do without SQL. You cannot do without SQL. Below here are different platforms that use SQL. Oracle, when you are dealing with Oracle database, you can use SQL freely to fetch information out of this database. We also have MySQL server, we use SQL there. We have Amazon Cloud. Amazon Cloud also, you can use SQL to fetch data from that system also. So SQL is a very, very important tool that you need to have at your disposal as a data analyst. I intentionally bring this down here for you to have a foreknowledge of what you are about to go into. Now, we'll be using PostgreSQL here in this tutorial, in this boot camp, like we have on my screen here. We'll be using it. But you need to know that there are other platforms which also give you avenue to write your SQL code. We have MySQL, you have Microsoft SQL Server, we have your BigQuery. We have quite a number of platforms whereby you can write your SQL. But keep this at the back of your mind. The pattern is almost the same thing, but when you are jumping from each of these platforms to another platform, the syntax are a little bit different. Initially, when I was started using SQL, I am using a software called Navicat, and Navicat directly links up with PostgreSQL. But when the company I work with, they now need to move to BigQuery, I encountered another problem, because I was thinking I could just use the same syntax I'm using here in BigQuery. But when I got there, I discovered that there are little variants. So have that at the back of your mind, that when you move from each of this platform to another one, there are little variants in their syntax. But the good thing is the process is still the same. The statement is still the statement, just that there are some that will tell you need to cut some of the uh, maybe column or rows that you are using, so to say, that you need to quote them, and some you may just write them freely. So you need to have that at the back of your mind. I hope we are following. I hope we are following.
Yes, yes, we
Sure,
are
sure,
following.
sure.
Thank
Yes,
you.
sir, we are following you.
Okay, I just need to be sure that I'm not talking to myself. Um, when we sent this the advert for this boot camp out, we listed some things that we'll be covering in the course of this training, and that's what I'll be majoring on. SQL is a little bit wide, but we just major on the basic tools that you need as an analyst, and I think we all be good with that. The first thing we'll be looking at is the six, I prefer calling it six big statements in SQL. If you have this tool at your disposal, you can always dance around with your SQL and you can achieve a whole lot of things. However, there are some other statements that are in between this. But it's good for you to look at this order. This order is not just, we don't just write it for writing sake. When you are writing your code, it must also be in this order. Please note this very well. Select must come first, from will follow, after from your where, group by, having, and order by. If you misplace this order in your code, you would be having issue at the long run. So please, let's note that very, very well. Let's note that very, very well in this. Now, another thing that we also be looking at in this training is join, SQL join. And what does this does? We basically use this to join two or more tables together. And for some of you that you're already working with Power BI, you must have a little knowledge of modeling, whereby you relate one table with another table. So there are instances whereby you may have a whole lot of tables, and that alone will make your work even more complicated. SQL is able to clean up such data in such a way that it will be easier for you to analyze. So, and these are all very important to do that. We have different type of join. We have the inner join, the left outer join, the right outer join. All these are what we'll be looking at in the course of the training. And for example's sake, we have these two tables here. This is an order table, and we have a customer table. This order table alone, in the organization where I worked, I think there was a time the order table alone was over 1 million rows. 1 million rows. And you can imagine how big that data is. So this SQL you are doing now is to prepare your mind to the real stream of data analysis, analytic. Because when you analyze just maybe 1,000 rows of data, you may feel like you are okay. But when you meet the reality, then you appreciate SQL very well. For instance, let's assume this data alone is about 5 million rows. This customer table is about other tables is about 5 million rows. And you have about, let's say, 800,000 customers. These are two tables. And this alone is a very, the size of such data will be very, very huge. And you can imagine having them separately and having about 10 other tables like this in your data that you want to analyze. That will be a lot of problem for you. So that is when you appreciate tools like inner join. If you look at this inner join now, everything we need about this order that we have here has been joined together with the customer table, and you have it here. And with this, you are just having one table one table. So if we are creating a virtuals in Power BI with this other table now, with this just table, most of the time we call it fat order table. With this table now, you have it. If you are coming up with a virtual, your virtual will display very fast. But if you have that table separately, like I already know Power BI, I don't have problem. You link them up and you have a huge data, like I've mentioned, you'll be having issue. You'll be having issue. I would not want to go too far, but I think I have real experience of that. Real experience of that a lot, and it was SQL that built me out. It was SQL that built me out. You can imagine this other table now. This other table, you discover that you don't have the price of the order here. So obviously, this order may have other type, and the price is in other type table. You can imagine now that you are now having a whole lot of tables to work with, and with that, you'll be having problem. So in that situation, inner join, outer join, right, would help you a lot to solve that kind of problem. Is to join two or more tables together, and with it, you can analyze your data easily. Now, the next thing would also be looking at in the course of this training, although maybe not as a topic, so to say, but in the process of we doing all this inner join, outer join, we'll be touching them, but you may not know, is this data normalization and denormalization. This is the core of analytic. When you miss these two aspects of your data analysis, you will be jumping into unforeseen error. Now, it's cut across data analysis and data engineering. But as a data analyst, you need to know all these things. You need to know this context, these two contexts very well. Also, because if you don't know it, you may be running into error. Now, what is data normalization? Data normalization is a form, is a way whereby we remove redundancy. Let me give you an instance. Let me just look at our faces here and pick name. We have Blessing, we have Ebenezer, and every one of us like that. If I ask Blessing, what can you we just say number 2, so, maybe Ikorodu, Lagos State. Now, if I ask Ebenezer, tell me your address, Ebenezer can also mention his own address. In that kind of data, you will end up falling into redundancy when you want to analyze such data. Let me just try and make that clearer a bit for us. I just want us to understand the context of normalization and denormalization. Let's say Blessing. We have address. Yeah, sorry. We have name here, and we have address here. And we asked Blessing to tell us his address. Blessing said number one, Ajanoku Street. Blessing can even write it as EKG, lag states. Now, you will notice that this person now, to analyze this person based on location will be difficult. I hope we all agree with that. Hello? I need
Yes, we are following you.
Yes.
So to analyze this person data would be very, 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 very difficult. So this is where normalization comes in. We have different type of normalization. We have first order normalization. We have, I'm not taking you through all this. We have, and it was named after one person. Now, this first order normalization is a way you group all your data together. For your first order normalization, you can have name, address. Do this whole process, but it's good for you to just have name, address. This
Mr. Tokwe,
yep.
can you off your video so that we can have more signal, more strength for the network?
Okay, let me do that.
Thank you. So I'm sorry for the interruption.
Oh, where am I? So this is let's say first order normalization. As this thing is too abstract and we may end up having problem. So what about we having it in this way? Like, okay, we have the same thing in second order now. Then we now break this thing down a bit, like saying, let's say, streets. It says streets. We now move on to say, okay, tell us your town, and we now say, tell us your states. So this, as it is now, is in second order normalization. Second order normalization. So this is first, why this is second order. Now, as this thing is now, you all will agree with me that it's easier to understand this data than this, right? Yeah. So
Yes.
we can then now move on to one very important one also called third order normalization. Third order normalization. In third order normalization, we can be tempted to break this table into maybe 2 or 3. Let's say we have customer name. We have customer name here, and we have street here, and we may then now come here and have a table. Okay, let's say we have states ID, state ID, and we cannot then have another this thing that contains another table entirely. This is a table. Let me make it clearer. Don't be scared. The SQL is not hard as what I'm presenting to you. This is a little bit deeper. It's most people that study data analytics in higher institution or computer science in school that does it, but you need to understand it also. This is a customer details table. Customer details table here. We can then have states table. I'm just using this as an example. So here we can now have state ID. Here we can have states. State here. And below here, I think there was a place I added town. We can now have town here. Now, as this table is now, we've been able to split our data into three other normalization. With this now, we can have detailed information about town, about states and town. Now, I will be, this is one of the things why we're talking about redundancy and all that in our data. If you look at this thing now, there will be redundancy in this data, because as it is now, we can have a town can be having more than one state. A town can be having more than one state. Then with this, we'll be having problem. So in this case also, we may be tempted to have a kind of table called town table. I'm just using this as an example for us. In this case, then we now have town ID. We can have town ID here, and below here we can then have the state ID, and the upper part here where I wrote state ID here, I think it's better put as town ID. So with this now, we've broken this table to this, and by now you should understand what I mean by redundancy. Like, you will not be at a situation whereby you'll be stranded in your data. So with this now, we can have all the information we needed for this customer details, and we know that we can always fall back to any of these tables to get any information we need. So this is normalization. And I will tell you this very well. Most data engineers have their data like this. Are we good? Most data engineers have their data like this. So as a data analyst, it's now up to you to now look for a way to match this data. You cannot analyze this data like this. This is 1, 2, 3 table alone. And I told you there are situations whereby you can have a table that will contains over 2 million data, 3 million set of data. And you can imagine you complicating issue with all these ones. Now you want to analyze states. You are now drawing a relationship that links to town. From town, you draw another one that leads to this. You now want to analyze your state. I will tell you, it may take, for some Power BI visuals, it won't even open. It will not even open. So this is where this thing comes in, normalization. In normalization now, we will tend to bring our data back to something like this. Everything is splitted. Everything has already been splitted down here. This is what a data engineer will be presenting to you. And with this, I must tell you, they are doing a good job such that no data will hang imbalance. Everything with your data, you can be able to get everything you need. So you can then now be thinking of bringing your data back to something like this. You already have town ID here. With this town ID, you can create a relationship with this. And with this, you can get the state ID with this relationship. So from this state ID relationship, linking up with this, you can also use a join query in your SQL to get your state. And you can be having a table like this. And with this, you know that you have a simpler table to analyze. So this is from normalization to what? To denormalization. So that is the concept of normalization and denormalization. If you look at example that we have here, we have products, we have customers, we have order, and we also have order item table. Now, this order item table tells you the stages of your order, maybe the time the order was received, the time it was processed, the time the order was closed. Now you can, if you have this separately now and you want to analyze this data and you are leaving this order table on its own, if this order is 1 million row, this one will be looking at about 3 million rows. So why do you want to keep this in your data set? So that is where the normalization comes in. Easily, you can just use a query. Definitely, this order will have another ID, and this item order will also have other ID. You can just look for a way to pick the maximum dates of an order to know the status of that order at that point in time. And with that, you have a simpler data to analyze. So we'll attempt to look at example of that later on as we go on in this training. Now, let's go to our platform. I need to be sure that you are with me again. Can somebody talk?
Can hear you loud and clear.
We can hear you, sir. You can continue, sir.
If I may ask, so far, do you have anybody with question before I move on? Okay, in the absence of that, you can move on. Now, in this place, once you open your PostgreSQL, once you open it, I believe for those of you that have it, you must have put your password, right? You must have put your password and every other thing. So once you have done that, this is the environment that you will find yourself. You open your server. Once you open you have it like this. Once you open your server, this is what you will have. And what then do we need to do next here? We need to create a database. How do you create a database in your PostgreSQL? All you do is you can right click on this place. When you right click, go to create, and when you go to create, click on database. When you click on database, you will then type the name you want to give your database. Okay, I have Paul data. Okay, let me just use Paul data. I'll be using Paul data. I will save. Ignore this. I'm very sure this must have been created already. You can see now, Paul data already exists. So let's look for that here. I'm going to close this. Let us refresh this. Refresh. Now let us look for Paul data. This is it. We have it here. Sorry, I added one last T to it in the front here. So this is Paul data. This is the database we just created, and we need to work on this now. So what we'll be doing here basically is to first of all see how we can create a table. Okay. Ideally, in most tutorials, you will see them importing table directly here to work with. But I feel that's not a good practice. So I rather teach you how to create your table. And when you create your table, you also learn how to insert data in your table. So let's quickly do that. How do we go about that? You come to this schema here. Hello, please note I'm on where? Paul data, the database I created. Then I'll come here, click on this schema. I'll come down here to table. Two things. You could come here, click on table, and you start creating it one by one. Or alternatively, you can come to this query tool here. which is what I'll be taking you because we are here to learn code. We are here to learn code. So that's what I'll be doing for you. So to create a table, I have this query here already, and I want us to go through it one by one. If you look at this function here, drop, this function drop, it's very useful in a situation whereby you create a table and you want to freely run the table as you so desire. Let me remove it and let's continue with what we have. I think we should focus on creating table. So now let's move on. Create table if not exists. In this situation, if this table user is already in our database, it will not create it. But if it's not existing, it will create this table. So how do you go about that? You first of all come up with this query here called create. You can see it's just like English. Create table if not exist. It's just like primary school English. Now you put the name you want to give your table. In this case, I will put Paul users. I believe that most of you will be looking at the way I type most of everything I have here. You discover that I don't put space. Most of the syntax here don't allow you creating something that have space. So you look for all these special characters that allows you to join words together and you can still understand what you are saying. For instance, here now you can see Paul underscore user here. So once you do that, you open a bracket, which is what I have here. Let's do that. I've just created my table. My home practice is that once I create this thing and I create the table name, I open the bracket and I close it immediately because I don't want to stress myself looking for where there is error in my code. So it's better you close it immediately. And you then start. When you start like this, the first thing you type your field name. By now, you all should understand what I mean by field. That contains information about a particular entity. So the first entity we'll be looking at here is user ID. And this, my user ID, I want it to be something that populates automatically. Like if I enter record for Femi, you should give Femi user ID 1. If Paul register, give Paul user ID 2. So that is where this serial comes in. In other platform, apart from PostgreSQL, is different. I think in my SQL, it's usually auto increments, but in Postgres is serial. So since that's what I want, I will come here and type serial primary key. Now, I think this is another thing we need to understand. In database, we have different kind of key. We have primary key and we also have foreign key. I think maybe in our next class, I will try and get a kind of pictorial view to explain that to us. But as it is, maybe we'll even get to that in the course of this class. So these are primary key. You come here, you type the next column of the what's my next column now? Let's say first name, first name. You can see that first being highlighted. It was highlighted because he's saying it as a kind of statement, so to say. Another thing, wow, a lot of things I think we need to mention also. I think we also need to talk about uh, data type. It's something that we should have talked about. We also have what we call data type in SQL. And we have the different data type we have quite a number of them. We have voucher that you see here. What is this voucher meant for? This voucher is a kind of data type that can contain tests basically. And in MySQL, we have them in different level. We have test as a data type on its own. But the idea there in MySQL is that tests cannot contain much data, much character as this voucher. So it's always safe and free for you. Anytime you want to write anything that has to do with test, declare it as voucher. Declare it as this, and which is what I am doing here. We also have integer. And what is this integer? Is all this 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So this is integer for you. We also have floats. What is float meant for? Float is for decimal, maybe 1.2, 3.4, 4.5. This is for float data type. Date is also a data type. We also have dates. Yeah, maybe you want to put your data in date format. It's also a data type. We have quite a number of them, but these are the major ones that we use. These are the major ones that we use, and please let's have them at the back of our mind. So here is it here, first name. So I need to declare my data type. So ideally, it's also a good practice. You can use your tab to align your code. Declare this as Valka and put your comma, come down here. I'll call this last name. The data type will also be this. Sorry, let's have it in capital. So let's have it that way. We also have registration dates. Because of our time, just let me copy this. We also have registration dates. And the last thing is we want to know the country you are from. So with this, we are about to create a table. And once we are done with this, because most of the time you don't just write one query and end everything like that. You always need to demarcate with your semicolon to say that, okay, this is one query and there's another query elsewhere. So let's see how this works. Look at the top of your screen. You see this play button. So click on play. And once you do that, you can see query return successfully. This is to tell you that this query works well. Let's quickly reload. Let's refresh this table. So we have refreshed. What can you see here now? You can see poll users. here. So let's do something. Let me just type a query like select all. When you have asterisk, like you are simply saying select all from this table. Let's see what we have. Can you see? This table is empty. So what you can just see is the heading here that we have for this table. So this is how to create a table in SQL. So more to that, and we would quickly do that right away. I think I have a query that does that. I am not inputting data now. I'm not inputting data now. So let me use this. I have a query that does that. So let's come down here. We want to create a kind of transaction table. Let's take, for instance, you are paying for this training. So we want to create a transaction table. So like I did for the other one, I'm going to copy this down here. I'll copy this down here, and I will delete everything we have here. I'll delete everything we have here. So as usual, create table if not exists. Don't forget, this one is drop table if exists. This drop table if exists is that, for instance, we already have data inputted in this poll users. Immediately this code runs, bams, it will clear all the data. So this is just the essence of this. Then it will now recreate it again. So it's just straightforward. Now, I told you, create table if not exist, write the name of the table, quote it. One thing I want to explain to us here, so just follow me patiently. Follow me patiently here. It's a little bit different from what we did before. Let's have it here. The first thing we have is transaction ID. Because of our time, I'm going to just copy this. I believe this should not be strange to us again now. We have transaction ID and we have it as serial. We want this to increase normally. So the next thing which I would intentionally type is user ID. What I wrote here, I believe someone, okay. What I actually want is that this user ID I have here, I want it in this table. So that is why I'm typing it here, user ID. So like I said, I usually love my code to be in good order. So I will tab it and bring it order. So this time around, it's going to have I'm going to give it what's it called? Data type called integer. Integer. And this time around, it's no longer a primary key, right? So you need to now reference. You use a query called a statement called reference. I just hope we are following. Reference this table that I have here, Paul user. I'll bring it a Paul user in brackets. This column. So what this is simply saying is that in this transaction table, I want to have user ID, but I am referencing it to Paul users table, and the column I'm referencing it to in Paul users table is this user ID. I hope we are following. So after that, we can move on just freely to just type our dates, have our dates, Yeah. And amounts for this class. That's what we'll be having. Amounts. So I can close this now. Now, our time is gone already. So let's finish this. So we have create table if not exist transaction. We have transaction ID as primary key. We have user ID as integer, referencing per users table, and the column I'm referencing is to users table. You need to understand that this thing is not working because this column here is called user ID. Is not the reason. It could be anything. So if it is anything, is that name I will be typing in here. So far is what I'm linking up with this. So let's get that at the back of our mind. Now, this one could also be anything. It could be my user, my user ID. It doesn't affect anything. It doesn't affect anything. It will still work. It will still work. So let's get that. Let's have this now and let's run it. Yeah, there is error somewhere. So where's the error? You can imagine it's just this semicolon here that caused the error. Here is a semicolon here that caused the error. Let us run it again. I will remove this here. Let's see what we have again. Now it's working successfully now. Let us just try it now and see. Select from transaction table bus. Okay, sorry, it's running out the code. You can see now. So if you want to run a particular code, you highlight the code or the query, then you click on this, so it will run that one alone for you. I hope we can see it now that, okay, this is our primary key, this is our user ID, and this is it. So in this situation here, this user ID here is working, is acting as a foreign key, is acting like a foreign key here to user ID here. Now let me see if I can attempt something for us quickly. Let me see if I can. Objects, ERD for table. Let me bring this out here. ERD means entity relationship diagram. Now, what we simply have here is that you can see the relationship. For those of you that have been using Power BI, you must have seen something like this. This is the foundation. If you get it, if this is wrong from here, Power BI will give you a little bit problem. But anyway, Power BI we still have a way of manipulating things over there. But this is just the root of your data here. So if you look at this thing now, you can see that I'm having a relationship here. You can see for our poll users table, we are having a primary key here. This is a primary key here alone. And when we get to our transactions table, we have transaction ID here as our primary key. You can see this key here is yellow, this key here is yellow. But when we got here, we have another key here. So this one here is a foreign key. And what this one is simply saying is that this is one to many relationship. You can see is one here, and you have it 1, 2, 3 here, many relationship. is to tell us that a user can perform more than one transaction, and which is exactly what we want. A user here can perform more than one transaction, which is exactly what we want in here. So normally I shouldn't bother you too much on this, but for some of you, this could be helpful to you also. So let's go back to our poor data codes. I think it's time already. I'm going to stop here for now. Let me take one or two questions. So this is a good foundation. In our next class, we start inputting data into this and we start using our query on each of them. So thank you. Questions?
Thank you so much, sir. Thank you. Thank you for your time. Really learned a lot. Please, if you have any question for our facilitator, please kindly unmute your mic and let us know the question that you want to ask so that I can attend to it. Which area is not clear to us, so he can recap and explain to us very well.
Okay. Hello.
Yes, Mr.
Yeah.
Sam, good evening.
Yes, good evening. Thanks so much for the time. But where I have a question is when the table was about to be created, right? When it launched the interface, I think it was about selecting from a particular drop down where we can actually create a table. So I really do not know what happened. I think the name already exists. So you have to go down to another drop down so as to create the table. So I that is where I actually got it. I lost it, that I was actually not comprehending again. So I now want to ask, what is now the difference between where he wanted to start that table? Is it like he wants to design the table for us and see instead of writing the program?
Okay. The other aspect here is this. This is table here. Once you come here, you click on table. It will bring a kind of template for you. You understand? You type your table. Let's say, what can I use it now? Section, and you then come here, right? I don't use this often though, but we can play around it. So you come here, you type your column. Sure you understand? Let's say section ID. Okay, you come down here, you select the data type. And you know for section ID, the data type will be integer. This is it, integer. And then you may want to go along and do that. So here you select your primary key. You select your primary key. There are some situations whereby you create some column and you want a default value to be there. So this is what you have. You put it there as default value. If you want to add another column, you come here and you can now put section. In these are the place whereby we can now say, okay, Power BI, Excel, this and that. So let's come here and look for voucher. Where is it? STUV. I cannot see voucher here. So I think it should be somewhere here. Okay, maybe we can use this character then. I think so. With this now, we have this here. You can see now, as against me creating each of them one by one here, you are creating them in here. And so once you are done, you click on OK. But in a situation whereby you have a reference key, like the one I did for primary for that transaction table, you come to your constraint here, you can see it's already bringing a key here, section ID. If I want to link it up, if I want to make it a foreign key and all that, you click on the table you want to reference it with here. So that's all basically here. And I think if you come to this code here, it should write it out for you automatically. So instead of you writing it down here, you can do it there. But it will be a very, very bad way of me teaching you if this is what I am teaching you, because the platform at which you'll be running most of this code, there won't be this thing here. This is basically for data engineers. Maybe they are trying to create a database. Them themselves, they are creating the database. They want data to be entry. But if you are calling out data, you will not be having all these simple tools. Most especially in Power BI, you will not have all these tools there. You need to know how to write the code. But however, you are not creating table in Power BI. Though you are not creating table. So this is just to lay a good foundation for us. Once you are done, you click on OK. And we have a table cost section. So let me come here and do that also for section. Yeah, I hope it works. Something is wrong. Select dash from section. Now, there is a problem I think we are having here now. This section is like a recognized name in here already. So you need to cut it in this situation. I hope it works now. Yeah, is a kind of, a section is a kind of statement in SQL, like is a language in SQL. You want to borrow it. So that's why it's conflicting itself. So when you quote it, it will run. So I think that's one other thing that we've learned also this night. Any other person with question? Or Sam, I hope you are clear with that.
Yes, I'm fine with that. Thank you.
All right. Any question for our facilitator? Okay. Thank you everyone for joining. This will be dropping the curtain for tonight. Till we meet next week, same time. Let's have a great night with everyone. Thank you. Good night, everyone.
Yeah, thank you.